Chapter 4. After a day at the beach and a long quiet ride home, Jackson and Summer entered their apartment. Summer threw her bag down and looked at Jackson. "If you pull that again, I'm going to inform the VA that I can't do this anymore." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do, Adam. You tried to kill yourself." "Tell me you didn't." She stood behind the counter, focusing her stare on Jackson. He stood still, as if he was an inexperienced actor on stage and didn't know which side to exit. The silence between them grew loud. Finally, Jackson said, "You don't know what it's like to live like this. I can't remember anything. I can't even see you. I'll never be able to get a job." The soft honesty in his voice almost brought Summer to tears, but she knew that if Adam felt sorry for himself, he would try it again. She didn't want to be around to see a man like him, with so much beauty, youth, and potential, throwing his life away. His warm demeanor proved that there was someone around to love him. Hell, if someone didn't come soon, she would. "You're alive. That should count for something. Maybe it's a blessing not remembering, but you can get a job with training," Summer said with a strong voice, reminding him that it would be okay. She grabbed both his hands and they trembled at her words. "You are alive and you do have a life. That's more than some could say who never made it home from that damn war." He turned his head to the side and walked to the granite counter and sat. Summer glanced at him. "You don't have horrible nightmares like my father." She walked around and sat on the side of Jackson. He was a Vietnam vet. "I could hear him at night, screaming and getting up through the night, walking and sweating, and my mother worried about not knowing how to help him, trying to comfort him. It was difficult for her, but she managed. You were doing the same thing with me when I had my dreams, comforting me," he said, meeting her eyes. "It wasn't the same thing, Adam. You were dreaming of someone. You can't remember your nightmares. You were begging a girl not to leave you." Summer's head lowered. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Jackson admitted. "I can't remember the dream. Knowing that you are in love with someone hurts, but what's more important is to discover who you are. The problem is..." Summer made a sigh. "I can't handle another loved one dying." She placed her hand on his arm. Jackson turned to her and touched her chin and kissed her nose. "You have someone waiting for you that you love," Summer said, meeting Jackson's eyes. "I can tell," she said softly. Did Summer say she loved me? Jackson thought. He heard none of the rest of Summer's conversation. Maybe he heard what he wanted to hear. Jackson's heartbeat accelerated. Summer's hand rested on his wrist and she felt his frantic pulse. "It's me he loves," she convinced herself. His youthful body screamed. He wanted to take her in his arms and make love to her. But he still wasn't convinced of her feelings. How would it look for him to make advances toward her? She might reject him. But she didn't appear to be interested in anyone. She had as much as said so, and she as much as called him a loved one. Maybe she could learn to love a poor blind man who couldn't remember anything or anyone? "I'm going to take a shower and order a pizza for us," Summer declared, rising and reaching for her smartphone in her purse. Jackson headed for his room, undressed, dropped his clothes into a basket and entered the shower. He could feel the heat of his body surge. His hungry body needed Summer. Each warm drop of water slamming his skin gave him chills as he imagined her dragging her nails down his back, asking for more of his body. With the sound of the water, he thought he heard her whispering in his ear, "Give me more. I need all of you." He tilted his head back, allowing the water to substitute for the erotic pleasure and dreams of Summer that would fill his nights. The heat of his body had built up to its breaking point. He switched to cold water. How much longer could he stand not making love her? He lived with a beautiful woman, dreamed of this, but she wasn't his. Maybe if he could cobble together enough of the money that the VA owed him, he could buy her something. Maybe flowers and a dress. Women like those kind of things, he reasoned. Summer spent all her extra money on him, and he didn't like it, not one bit. He needed to do something. How much longer would he have to wait? He stepped out of the shower. Dressing, then opening the door to his room, he stumbled along the walls to get to the kitchen, where he discovered the pizza delivery boy had deposited the pizza and gone. He could smell the heaps of bubbling hot cheese, which was a familiar aroma. His face brightened and he gave Summer a wide smile, then walked to the counter and sat, reaching for the pizza. Summer rushed to his side. "Wait a minute, it's too hot for you." She handed him a can of Coke, and he could hear her blowing on the pizza for him before handing a slice to him. She looked at him, staring out and seeing nothing. Jackson thought about how much he liked her. "I have a small ranch house my father and mother left me in West Texas. I thought maybe we could drive out there next month and take a look at it, then during the summer, we can spend a few weeks out there. It would be great for you. No stress of the city, and it's cool in the summer among the trees. There is a pond for fishing. What do you say?" "Why are you doing this for me?" Jackson asked, facing Summer. "I'm doing this for me as well," she said. "But you're too young to be tied down with someone like me." "I'm not tied down. I want to do this, and that brings me, well, I agreed to go out to dinner and dancing with an intern. But I won't go if you need me here." "Of course I need you with me, Summer. I want to be the one loving you and kissing you after a date," Jackson thought. He had become jealous. He didn't mean for this to happen. Why was he feeling so protective of her? He wondered. He knew Summer was a pretty girl, even if he couldn't see her. He didn't need to see her. Her beauty was in her soul. He felt it every time her hand met his, and when he heard her tender voice. Her voice was soothing and made him feel secure, even as her touch caused a tingling sensation which both calmed him and aroused him. Each night he remembered her voice in his dreams, because that was the only avenue of experiencing her love. It was his dreams of Summer that erased the nightmare of being blind. He didn't have to see her face to know that she would make a great partner, lover, and friend to any man. He wanted her for his own. He had never felt that way before. Hell, he didn't know how he had felt before, but he knew it was new to him now, this feeling of wanting a woman exclusively. He couldn't imagine sharing her with another man. Somehow, he knew he had no right to ask her to be his girl. "You don't have to inform me when you go on a date. It's not like I'm your boyfriend." But Jackson was wishing he were something more to her, anything but a yoke around her neck. At 9 p.m., Jackson lay on his bed with the door to his room slightly ajar. He was staring into the darkness when Summer knocked on the door and he murmured, "Come in." "I'm leaving now." She stood waiting for him to ask her a question. Ask her to stay with him. She wanted him to say, "Don't go, Summer, stay and be with me. Never leave me. I bet you look pretty. I wish I could see you." "Go before I ask you stay," Jackson said with a quiet voice. Summer was disappointed. She wanted him to beg her to stay home and wait to go dancing with him. However, she wanted him to say more, "I love you, don't go." They were both so lonely and both at cross purposes, and although they were so close now, they were so far from each other. She walked from the room to answer the door and Jackson heard her date say, "Do you live with your father?" And he heard her say, "No, he's my brother, his name is Adam." Tears pooled in his eyes. His hands reached up and wiped the tears away, leaving him wondering why he had cried. Maybe it was the medication the doctors had given him. Yes, medication, that was probably it, he murmured. After she left, Jackson sat in the same spot for hours. He heard the time on the radio, 11 o'clock, when Summer returned. He thought it was too early, but he was happy she didn't stay out later. She opened the door to his room to peep in on him, and found the television blaring on CNN, and the radio on near his bed. She walked over and turned them off. He could smell the cigarette smoke in her hair, however he never knew her to smoke. Through the smoke he could smell her scent, which he loved. She had the smell of strawberries. He would make sure that she had an ample supply of strawberry bath oil. After classes on a Friday, Summer returned home early. She decided not to stop at the grocer's. She would make do with what they had to eat in the pantry and use the money for things to lift Jackson's spirit, such as taking a trip to West Texas sometime soon. But for now, she wondered whether Jackson would enjoy a night out. How about a movie? I'm not good company, Jackson said, holding his nervous hands. We can go to the midnight showing and sit in the back, and I can tell you what's happening. What do you say? Summer glanced at Jackson's pale complexion. You need some sun. Let's go for a walk and then come back and eat pizza. Pizzas are cheap. What do you say? He nodded. How can I resist a pizza and a movie with you? You have found my weakness. Every man has a price. He smiled so bright that Summer felt a sensuous flame ignite her body. I picked up such a handsome man at a bargain price, she said with a smile and a curl of her lip. This is better than shopping at Goodwill. And I've got such a beautiful, wonderful girl who deserves more than I have to give her. You deserve more. He took her hand, lowered his head, and kissed her soft skin. Stop talking about money and what you can give me. Just pretend we are newlyweds and we're struggling. She didn't continue because she had dared get so comfortable with him that she likened them to newlyweds. Did she dare dream of such a union? His nights were filled with his dreams of summer, and each day she expressed her feelings for him. She took his hand and led him out of the apartment, down the stairs and through the path of trees and bushes, where a sidewalk appeared leading to the pool area and a man-made lake. Jackson's intermittent stops, where he stood to extend his face up toward the warmth of the sun, took in the showering rays, causing him to feel full of life and feel his youth which had escaped him. Now he felt renewed. They left for the movies, only to arrive at the movie theater early. They stayed in the car, listening to music until Summer said, "It's time." Then they went in and bought their tickets. Standing in line for popcorn and sodas, holding hands and laughing, they resembled lovers on a date. When it was time to go into the theater, they sat sharing a large bag of popcorn. Occasionally, he would sneak his arm around her chair, and she would lean into him to whisper about the scene. After the movie they left hand in hand with his attentive face turned to her, smiling whenever she spoke. She noticed something about him which she hadn't taken time to observe before. She saw another face under the neat beard, which he wore since his stay in the hospital. When they arrived at the apartment, she thought that it was worth mentioning. Maybe if he could feel his shaved face, he might be able to remember something. Any sensation may bring on memories, such as going to the beach. He remembered that he could swim. Hopefully eating popcorn and pizza would stimulate Adam's senses, Summer thought. He must have had some experiences as a teenager, and it wasn't that long ago. He was maybe 22 or 23. She didn't know how Jackson would react to her suggestion, but she had to try something. She was falling for him more and more each day. Desperate for him to remember something, Summer inhaled and broached the subject. Adam, let me give you a shave, or if you're afraid I have a nervous hand, I have enough money to pay for one. Summer waited for a reaction. Jackson's expression didn't change. He remained silent. Why do you keep that beard? It's not a lot, but you can't really see your face. Jackson's smile turned to tired sadness, and he tightened his lips. Summer didn't want to see him upset, and she added, I should say, I want to see that handsome face of yours. I keep the beard, I guess, he said, pausing to think, because I'm hiding behind it. I don't want to be seen. The beard makes me feel secure. He ran his hand over the bristly stubbles. You'll have to come out of hiding someday, Adam. Summer walked to the television and turned on the sports channel. She noticed that he had a smile on his face, and he came to life whenever a channel was tuned in to sports. There was something there to spark a reaction, and that's what she was trying to do. "Until then, if it doesn't bother you, I'll keep the beard," he said, stroking it. "It doesn't affect me in the least. I just wish I knew the real you." "I wish I knew the real me," he said, facing the direction of the television. And Summer left him sitting with the remote in his hand, and she went to her room. When Summer had time off from her studies, her babysitting job, and her volunteer work, she would sit with Jackson and question him about his past. She tried to do what the doctors were unable to do. Then she thought of something she had seen the social workers try with the soldiers. The social workers would ask them to write down their thoughts about how they felt about their lives. Summer brought home a small recorder and reminded him that he should express his innermost thoughts. Then she handed him several composition books. He turned to her. "What am I to do with these?" "They're for when you regain your sight," she said with a large smile. "Think positive." Summer would pass his room and see him facing an open window and recording his thoughts. His confused face searching for a word. His voice searching for answers as to why he chose a specific word. After a month, they drove out of Houston on I-10 West, heading in the direction of San Antonio. "Do you want to see the Alamo?" "The Alamo? Why not?" "Do you even know what the Alamo is?" "No, but you will tell me." His face turned in the direction of Summer. He wore a gentle, brilliant smile like no other, bright with a full set of white straight teeth. She had only seen teeth like that in fashion magazines. She asked herself for the umpteenth time whether he could be a model. Clearly, this was a man who had taken care of his body all his life. What could have caused him to enlist in the army? And clearly he wasn't from Texas. How could he forget about the Alamo? "You are my angel, Summer. I may not have a memory of my past, but you are giving me memories for my future." Wow, that sounds positive, Summer thought. But Summer had to remind herself that he could be someone's husband and father. "My house is not far." She had driven 3 hours and there was little traffic, with the exception of driving through San Antonio and stopping at the Alamo. She turned down a paved road, driving by an occasional trailer home, and then she spotted the small ranch-style house with a lake on the left side. She drove up the cement driveway. "My father had this driveway laid before he died. It was supposed to be his retirement home." The car came to a stop. Summer jumped out and Jackson followed, standing with his head raised to the sky. "The air smells so fresh and it's quiet out here." "Do you like it?" Summer asked, facing Jackson. "I would like it anywhere you are, my angel." Summer had gotten used to Jackson calling her my angel, and she reacted as if it was second nature, answering him whenever he referred to her in that endearing way. "We can stay a week. My doctor gave me 2 weeks' pay," he was generous. "It will pay for food and gas and other necessities. There's nothing to do but talk, read, and listen to the radio and the world about us. Do you think you can stand being around me that long?" Summer inquired. She watched as a smile crossed his face, but he didn't respond to her question. He could live with just the two of them, if they were the only ones on this earth, he thought. The whole house is already furnished, and there are only 2 bedrooms. It's not a large house, but it has an open design like your apartment. It will be easy to clean. And you won't bump into anything. Is that what you think, Summer? That all I need is quiet and clean air? Jackson asked, hoping for a miracle, hoping that Summer was his miracle. It can't hurt. Come with me to get the groceries and clothes out of the car. He held onto her shirt as she led him to the trunk. He reached for the bags and lifted them out, clutching them with one hand as if holding on to a football, while following the direction of Summer's voice. You're a gorgeous man, Adam. I wish you could see yourself, Summer said, teasing him and touching his rock-hard arms. You know how to flirt with a guy, he said. I have to stay in practice just. She didn't complete the sentence. She didn't want to hurt his feelings. After placing the groceries on the counter, he said, "The better to carry you over the threshold, my dear." And he scooped Summer into his arms, kissing her. His kiss was soft, long, and demanding. He knew how to kiss a woman, but she was afraid to admit that she needed a kiss. His kiss signaled that he was a man who knew how to love a woman, and she needed some loving bad, and soon. She leaned her lips to his lips and he opened his mouth wide. Summer's tongue mingled with his. She sucked it with ease. The heat coursing through her body was indescribable, but if she had to put it to words, his kiss was white hot. It seared her body and burned her soul, and left an invisible mark. That kiss reminded her of the day Jackson Van Hughes French kissed her, near an oak tree in front of their high school, which delivered her into his arms. Later, he took her to his bedroom, and she didn't care who whispered. But although she wanted to give herself to him, he would have nothing to do with it. She begged him that night, but he said that she was too young, and that one day they would find each other, and she would be a woman then, and he would marry her. She was still a virgin when she left his party. Now, 5 years later, she was still waiting for him. Would she wait her whole life for the boy she once loved? She knew the answer to that. She kissed Adam as if he was her one and only lover, which she hoped he would be. "I love you, Summer," Jackson said with a breathless moan, cradling her in his arms. "Put me down, Adam. You don't know me, and I don't know anything about you. Did it occur to you that you're probably married? You have children, a wife. You have created a life for me, Summer. But it's not my life." Jackson spoke strong, yet with a gentle tone. His eyes welled with tears, but he held them back. "Can't we just enjoy each other's friendship without all the complications?" Summer asked, gesturing for Jackson to place her on the floor. His face never left hers as he set her on her feet. "Why are you running from love?" Jackson asked, anticipating her movements and stepping in front of her. "Because everyone I've loved has left me, or I've had to leave them." Summer walked away from Jackson. He stood in the middle of the floor in his darkness. He placed his hand on the wall and found the nearest bedroom and lay across the bed facing a window. He fell asleep quickly and later woke. A full moon's light bled through his curtainless window. A trickle of light caught his eyes. He rubbed them, and then his eyes focused on the trees and then the house in a far distance. He could see it. "I can see. I can see? How can that be? All these days and not a flicker of hope. How does this happen? Am I dreaming? I take a nap and wake and I can see just like that. This doesn't happen. Maybe it's a mistake and I'm imagining there are lights in the distance," he thought. His mind filled with the thought of it, and he remembered the doctor saying he might regain his eyesight overnight, or it could take years. Now was not the time to tell Summer. She might want to rush back to Houston and bring him to the doctor, ruining their vacation. She needed the time off more than he did, after she had put up with him all these months. But he had to share this with someone, and the only person he knew and cared about was Summer. How was he going to break the news? Maybe his sight would go away as quickly as it had appeared. Jackson became nervous and tense. He reached inside his bag, found a composition book and a pen, and he wrote. After an hour, he placed the book and pen in the drawer next to his bed. Peace came over him, and he fell back to sleep. When he woke, it was dark all around and in his room. For a moment he thought he was still blind. The moon had settled behind the clouds, and it was early morning. He dressed and walked to the kitchen to see Summer cooking. She didn't hear him. He stood looking at her in amazement. He wanted a moment to drink in her loveliness. She was indeed a beauty, with her auburn hair falling in curls on her shoulders. He cleared his throat and she turned around. He focused on her big blue eyes, soft plump natural red lips and dazzling smile. "I thought you would sleep all night and day." You slept through breakfast. Now it's lunchtime. Summer said. She held a large spoon stirring a pot. I cooked something new for you. Do you like chili? I don't know, maybe. I have to tell you. Summer interrupted him. It can wait. Taste this. She handed him a spoon. He tasted it and coughed. What, too hot? Summer asked, disappointed. Not at all. Jackson sat on the stool watching Summer. I have this cookbook and I'm learning to cook Southwestern. Really? He paused. I have something important to tell you. Can't it wait until tomorrow? She asked, adding more chili seasoning to the pot. No, he said. Then tell me and ruin my day, she said, turning to face Jackson. How shall I say this? He paused, looking at Summer, and then he took off his glasses. I can see. Summer stood motionless, holding a spoon over the pot and then dropping it on the counter. She turned and stared at him in disbelief. Then she smiled. You're kidding. She shook her head. He shook his head too. No. She moved closer to get a better look into his eyes. They were a beautiful color of blue, and they were full of life. They told a story of a young man in pain and a young man who wanted to be in love. She knew that look because it was the same look that was staring back at her each time she peered into the mirror. She couldn't trust her eyes. She had to ask again. Are you kidding me? She passed her hands in front of his eyes and he blinked. You blinked. You blinked. Is this for real? Her heart beat fast and her breathing intensified. It's for real. And I'm real, Jackson said with open arms. She rushed into his arms and they held each other. Kisses of happiness passed between them. The laughter and dancing began. He twirled her around and they jumped up and down and shouted. Summer screamed. You can see, Adam. He stopped sudden and gazed at Summer. I can get a job and give you things. I don't want anything from you. I did this because you felt sorry for me. No. Because and she stopped and met his eyes. Because you love me? Is that what you wanted to say? Jackson questioned. Please say it. Yes, maybe. You are so thoughtful and handsome. Any girl in her right mind would want a man like you. Yet you behaved as if you are afraid of me, he said, holding her arms. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid you belong to someone else and I will get hurt. I don't feel as if I'm married. I would feel it deep down, but I don't feel that way. I would know, Summer. Trust me, I would know. He held her tight in his arms to comfort her. His words were spoken softly, his eyes spoke too. They said that he was hers if she wanted him. I'm in love with you. I know that I'm a single man. It's in my soul. I can't be sure, Adam. I need to know. She pulled away, holding back her tears, and made distance between them. I can travel to Fort Stockton before we return to Houston. There's an army post. Maybe I can get answers there. I might be able to get some kind of job for now, so we don't have to go back to Houston so soon. Summer, I want to be with you for the rest of my life. Don't make promises you can't keep. I can't stand it. When you find out who you are, I will be alone. I can say it because you're my love and my life, Summer. Things don't have to be as tragic as you are imagining. He wiped the tears from her eyes. They embraced each other, and their bodies yearned for what they needed, which was each other. It had been too long without the warmth of a loving woman for Jackson, and without a man for Summer. She needed Adam's love. The pull of Jackson's body might have been too strong if she hadn't reminded herself that he could have a family somewhere, and she could be opening herself up to heartache and pain of the worst kind. I know that you are saving yourself for the man you will marry, and I respect that. But I ask one thing of you. Please sleep with me tonight. You don't have to answer now, but if you find yourself in my bed tonight, I won't protest. Summer's eyebrows narrowed. No. Not that, but I'm a man and I want you in the worst way. I need to be close to you. I need the warmth of your body to make me feel alive and to remind me that I have value as a man. Summer was still, imagining her life with him. They sat and ate her homemade chili. They both agreed it was good, but could use a little less chili powder. Silence framed the evening. Then Jackson jumped to his feet. Let me help you clean up, Summer. Do you think you should? I haven't had brain surgery. I can do it. I just wanted you to rest. Maybe your sight might go away again, and I couldn't take that. It doesn't work that way, but since you are so keen on doing the dishes, I'm going to watch some sports and the news. You love sports, Summer said as she washed a pot. She turned around and stared at Jackson. Your body screams of sports or fitness nut. They laughed. It never occurred to me that I could be a fitness nut. He sat on the couch, engrossed in the sports channel. After Summer dried the last dish, she plopped near Jackson. You seem more interested in football than soccer or baseball. Do you remember playing football? It's nothing. Most men in this country are fascinated with sports, especially football. There's nothing more exhilarating than leading a team of men and throwing a perfect pass and it's caught, and your team wins. Summer turned her gaze to Jackson. His passion for football fascinated her. The things she knew about him and the things she didn't know troubled her conscience. After that big bowl of chili, we should go for a walk. We haven't had a chance to see that stream that runs near my property, Summer said, hoping to temper their sexual desires. Do you think we can see the snakes that come with that stream? Jackson said with a hearty laugh. You are terrible. How did you know I'm afraid of snakes? Maybe we can put it off for another day when I can run, Summer said with a laugh. I was hoping you were afraid of something. You can run into my arms and I can save you. Summer curled up near Jackson as he held her in his arms. Her head fell on his chest and her eyes closed. She was tired. She didn't realize how exhausted she had become. She had been rushing around taking Jackson to his doctors and physical therapy, while still working and going to school. She did it to help him because she wanted the best for him. She needed to know who this man was before she could have a life. In a short time, she had invested her whole life in him. Seeing Summer so tired, Jackson scooped her into his arms and carried her to her room. Before placing her in her bed, he thought for a second, and then he turned around and brought her to his bed. She would sleep with him tonight, he decided. Nothing would happen, but he couldn't bear another night of sleeping alone. He had no one and she had no one, but they had each other. He would take it slow. He would not rush her, even though he wanted her and needed her so much. Jackson's gaze fell on her, struck by the young beauty. He nuzzled his nose near the side of her neck, inhaling her sexy scent. Moonlight passed over her face, and he realized he had been walking in the dark. He had become used to the dark, but he wanted sunlight in his life, and Summer would be his sunlight, and he would be her strength and her love. Summer managed to open her eyes. Where am I? In my bed. Oh. And she fell back to sleep. It felt natural.